I'm Luka Blakeslee at the New Zone Gallery. I'm the featured artist for January of 2026. The title of my show is A Place in Time as Seen by a Trespasser in the Land of Death, which is quite a title, quite a mouthful, a little extreme maybe, but to me, what I was really trying to capture with this series of photos is the decay of life and the decay of the natural world, and also the creation and birth of many things in the natural world, and the unique ability of the photographer and of the camera to be able to capture it exactly as it is and exactly what its place in time in its natural life cycle is. And to me, I see myself maybe as the trespasser in the land of death, as, you know, seeing this and documenting it. This is the centerpiece of my show. It's titled Flowers from Too Far Away, and this is sort of a little bit of a double entendre, at least for myself, because these are flowers that my girlfriend got me from Seattle, and this is after they started to wither and wilt away a little bit, but the actual composition of the picture is extremely close up and extremely warm and vibrant, even though the flowers are decaying a little bit. But they, to me, and to my internal meaning of it, is that they're too far away. Even though they're very close, they're from a far off land, and especially they're, in the passage of time, they're getting further and further away from the world of the living. They're getting further and further away from where I am and where we are right now. This is another one of my pieces. This is titled Tears on Stone. This is a statue that I found in Salem, Oregon. It's a sort of monument to the Vietnam, like the soldiers from Salem, Oregon that passed in the Vietnam War. And when I saw it, I was like, there's something about it that just feels very, very human, but still not totally. And I thought to myself, I want to capture what it is that I see in this statue and the humanity that I see in the statue to make it almost look human and to make it look despairing, or to make it look in some way, a way that the viewer is able to connect with it. So I shot it, you know, very close up with very dramatic, I captured the light in a very dramatic way. I tried and got tons of angles. I also used a method called bokeh, which is often used for portrait photography. So anyone who knows about photography, it sort of speaks as a portrait picture, but also I think the actual style where the foreground is very, very close up and very in focus, and then if you go even a little bit beyond that, it's very out of focus. And essentially, I wanted it to look very human, almost indistinguishable, and I think I did. This is another one of my pieces titled The Beating Heart. This is out in Massachusetts where my grandmother lives. Behind her house, there's this big, semi-abandoned soapstone quarry that has a ton of like weird and rusted and totally dilapidated structures and machinery, but then it also has new stuff that's still being used to this day, but they just sort of leave this stuff, you know, scattered along in the quarry, along the walls of it. And when I saw this, there was something about it, especially the uneven wear and uneven rust that it has, this area being like basically untouched. This part of it looks very new and looks very fresh. And it reminded me a lot of sort of the human anatomy. To me, this is like the beating heart, the most like untouched and most pure part of it. And then the rest of it has this wear and grade to it that slowly goes away when you look across it. But very complicated geometrically, and it just stuck out to me. This is another one of my pieces. This is titled The Mind is the First Thing to Go, which is sort of a little bit of a morbid irony in the title, because this is a squirrel that I found right around the corner of my house. Very like busy street, busy walkway, tons of college kids going around there, and just in the middle of the sidewalk there was this dead squirrel but when I took the picture, most of the flies went away, but it was totally encompassed by them. It looked like a blanket across the squirrel. And I thought it was so interesting to see the way that they slowly ate away at the squirrel's head and basically left the rest of his body untouched. It shows, like, to me, I wouldn't want to ascribe meaning to what flies do, thinking that they have any level of necessarily like intelligence or intention, but I think it's really interesting to see like the way that the forces of nature and the forces of the world work, that the mind, like the head, the most valuable part of, you know, really what like contains the spirit or the like motivation of an animal, like really their identity, is the thing that's lost first. That the animal, you know, when they die, this squirrel, as an example, that they lose their identity before they lose the rest of their body. They lose what holds themselves inside of it. And I just thought it was very interesting. This is another one of my pieces. It's titled Venular Dunes, which means venular is relating to the veins or relating to the arteries. And venular dunes, this is my girlfriend's hand holding a gnat that we were on a field trip, and there were a ton of bugs, and one just like, she kind of caught it like mid moving her hand, and it was just laying on her hand. And to me, the way that her hand is open and the moment that I caught her hand in, it's so open and gentle and very neutral, and it reminds me a lot of earthen landscapes, like stuff that you see in the real world, like dunes specifically. And the scale of it, of like the gnat that's here, and then there's this part of the palm of her hand going up, and these curves and everything. It seems like this like vast place that this gnat, even though it's not like its habitat or its home, her hand, it's somewhere that it can rest for a second, or somewhere where it could have like a reprieve of this neutral gentleness that she has in her hand, that I think is also, obviously I'm very biased, but I think is very representative of her character. And I think that especially there's something about the framing on it, because it's a candid shot, she wasn't really posing for it or anything. There's a dimension of like action to it, and this tension that she's kind of she's mid-moving her hand, and it's not fully stable, and especially it's not fully stable to the gnat, but it just still is there, and it's still there in that moment, and that's kind of what matters. This is another one of my pieces. The title is The Exchange. This is another place that I found in Salem, Oregon. I was walking down, I believe it was Main Street in Salem, and I was on a trip with one of my friends, and I had shot through the entire roll of my film that I brought. I only brought one roll, and I saw this abandoned storefront off of Main Street, and I thought to myself, I was like, geez, like it looks like someone just left for the day. The towels are just placed here, the chairs look like they're not put away. You could totally imagine the exact way that people walked out of there and got out of their chairs, and these little like glass kind of baubles, I guess you would call them, and all of it just looks like someone left it there, but it was like boarded up around the other side, and it was totally abandoned. And this was the last frame that I had on my roll of film, and I just kind of tried it, and I was like, okay, I don't know how this picture will turn out, but when I got it developed, it ended up being one of my favorite pictures I've taken, because there's something about the way that the light still comes in through these front windows and through this top window. It keeps it so alive, and it keeps it still so much a part of that main street and that bustling part of Salem, but it's not alive. It's no longer inhabited. but it still is like a part of it. It's like these bones of that Main Street area, and eventually it will be inhabited by someone else. But for now, it's in this limbo state, sort of. It's in this like purgatory of kind of a store, kind of not a store. Could be a store at any time, or it could also be demolished. Who knows? But there's so much potential to it, and that's what it really speaks to me. This is another one of my pieces. The title is Passage. I was out on a Bureau of Land Management road out towards Veneta with one of my friends, and we had found this deer carcass that was a full deer carcass with the skeleton and the skull and all of the legs, all of it together. And when I was looking at it, the rib cage was totally intact, and I thought to myself, there's something about the architecture of that reminds me a lot of old monasteries or mosques or cathedrals with this very wide opening and this very pointed top. And I was like, okay, I'll take some pictures in there. And when I got this one developed, it really spoke to me because the curve of this spine, and this is rotated, and the sort of woody floor in the forest that I took the picture, and then also this sunlight that's coming in through this side, it seems to me like it's reminiscent of a passage to death, or a passage to the afterlife, or whatever, where the path is very thin between this darkness and this light, but then eventually it opens up after it's tightest, after it's the most constricting, that there's this long passage that one has to go through to reach freedom, and that it's easier early on, and then it slowly narrows and it slowly gets more difficult to separate yourself from one side or the other, and you have to experience both sides near the end before you get to the reprieve of the outside. My show will be up all of January, and we have 2 other featured artists, and we have plenty of artists from many different mediums, the most talented in town and the most prestigious art gallery in Eugene. Please come by in January and see my show and many others' amazing work.